and we are very excited for our 6th session of Data and Dish featuring the ALICE data. We are also glad that you're here today with us. My name is Jessica Davison. If we haven't met before, I'm so glad you're here spending this 12 o'clock hour with us. I see people are adding their name and agency in the chat, so if you've just joined in, welcome, and please share your name and agency in the chat. Joining me today is Rashid Tillis. Let him.
Greetings. Hope all is well.
Yes, thank you, Rashid. Yes, we hope everyone's well. We know the past 2 weeks have been a lot with the winter freeze, so we hope this finds everybody well and glad you could spend this time with us. So it's 12:01. We're gonna share screen and go ahead and get started. So thank you all again. We are very glad you're here today with us. And if you haven't already, I know I've said it a couple of times, but please share your name and agency in the chat. And just as a housekeeping note, we'll share the recording, the PowerPoint, and then loads of resources with you after the session. We have reached our 6th session of Data and Dish featuring the ALICE data. We know that some people have been loyal followers of the Data and Dish series. So thank you all. And if this is your first session, welcome. We're so glad you're here and that you found us. So we will kind of get started. Since I know people have been coming and going through our sessions, I just wanted to provide a level set on the ALICE data. So ALICE is a quantitative data analysis of what it takes to make ends meet. It uses real world, bare bones household budgets specific to our area. The ALICE data presents a more accurate picture of the economic reality across our community, especially regarding the number of households that are severely economically challenged. So there are 2 core components to the ALICE data, the survival budget, and then the percent that are ALICE or living in poverty. So here on the screen, you'll see the survival budget. So this is really unique to the ALICE data. The survival budget is specific to the county, state, and household size based on the area. The survival budget includes actual costs of things such as housing, childcare, food, transportation, healthcare, and then technology. The ALICE survival budget, again, it's bare bones, real world, conservative estimates for what it takes to make ends meet. Right here, you'll see the family of 3 represented by a single parent with a preschooler and a school-age child that needs about $57,893 to make ends meet annually, which boils down to about $4,800 on a monthly budget. So from the survival budget, we're able to understand, that close to 1 million households in greater Houston area are struggling to make ends meet. And this was from 2018. So this was pre-COVID-19. So from 2016 to 2018, the percent of ALICE increased in Texas and greater Houston area. In 2018, 44% of Texas households and then 47% of greater Houston were ALICE or struggling to make ends meet, meaning they were living below the federal poverty level. But we can also look at this by county. So you can see here that in 2018, both Fort Bend and Montgomery County were at 38% living ALICE and living below the federal poverty. And then Harris County was at 48%, and Waller County, while it did have a slight decrease from 2016 to 2018, is now at, the top end at 49%. And it's really important to remember that households move above and below the ALICE threshold as economic and personal circumstances change, which is especially true during times of disaster, such as what we've experienced 2 weeks ago with the winter freeze, or with what we're currently experiencing with the pandemic. More recent studies and polls are showing that closer to 63% of individuals of families in Houston reported that they were struggling to make ends meet due to the pandemic. The thing I really appreciate, though, the most about the ALICE data is you can really get hyper local about what does it look like in your community, in your zip code. So this is a map of the 4 county service area that includes Fort Bend, Harris, Montgomery, and Waller counties. The darker the blue indicates a higher concentration of families or in households, that are ALICE and below, meaning that they're at ALICE or below the federal poverty level. And so here you can see the darker blue in Harris County. There's kind of this backward C, which is really common backward C of prevalence. So maybe there's a higher rate of not being able to access technology, food insecurities, limited access or no access to healthcare or healthcare coverage. And so you often see this in that darker backward C prevalence. And then for as you kind of work your way outward to the outlying counties, so Fort Bend, Waller, and Montgomery, you see this kind of mixture of suburban and rural where there's more prevalence of ALICE and below. And the map really highlights that ALICE is spread out across our 4-county area, which has a different impact on individuals and families, especially when you compare the suburban, urban, and rural challenges people face. So that is my level set on the ALICE data. So thank you all so much. If you have any questions on the ALICE data, please always feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer that. So today's session, the ALICE in action, it's focusing on taking the ALICE data from the report into action to improve financial stability of ALICE families and our communities from within your programs and your agency. So there are 4 areas of focus that we're actually going to look at today. So we're going to look at this from the lens of strategic planning. So when we think of strategic planning, we're thinking of, setting the agency goals and objectives. What's that blueprint for how the agency will accomplish their goals? We'll also look at this from program development and design. So how is a program mapped out? What are the processes and purpose of the program? And how does that fit into the operations for what the program is actually doing? Service delivery is the 3rd area, which is what the program's actually doing, right? So that's the boots on the ground work. And then other. So this is kind of the open area where it could be from the lens of maybe development, marketing communications, really thinking outside of the box of other ways that programs and agencies can use the ALICE data and put it into action. So those are the 4 focus areas. And as you can see, we have some kind of underneath each area, like how maybe that might look. So strategic planning, really seeing how does the ALICE data fit within the agency goals and objectives, or from program development and design, how are we using the ALICE data and what's it affect on the key components of the program? How is service delivery? What's the impact look for ALICE when we look at our services? And then how do we push this information out to the larger community, to the public eye, through the other area? So really giving that as like a catch-all. But I'm going to hand it off to Rashid to help cover and step us into strategic planning.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and so glad that everyone's here taking in this information. So let's jump right into strategic planning. We all know how critical this is to the work that we do and the clients that we serve. So let's look at these 4 bullets. The first one says strategic planning helps us to gain a clear view of which populations are in need and what type of service deliveries are needed for those populations. So having a clear view of who we're serving is really, really key, right, to our strategy. The second bullet says determining how to address needs within a specific community. The strategic planning also helps us to better understand and tailor services to our students and their families. And I don't know about you, but I personally love the word tailor. I love customization, and it's very important that we know the services and better understand those that we serve. And the last bullet there talks about strategic planning also helps us to explain why our service is needed and the impact they can have on individuals and the community. So again, if you've been in the nonprofit sector any length of time, this is, the very baseline work that's necessary concerning reaching our communities. So strategic planning as it relates to ALICE in action, these are some key components here. So we'll go on to the next slide. All right, diving deeper. Program development and design. I'm sure we have some of those folks on the call today that's maybe some of your key area of focus in your work. So let's look at these bullets here. So the first one says targeting specific areas in community to concentrate outreach, potential agency collaboration, and identifying clients residing in those areas. Looking at the racial disparities among clients and seeking ways to counterbalance those experiences. And we know that this is increasingly becoming increasingly important as we focus on some of our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work. Also, program development and design is centered around planning where to focus services, identifying vulnerable populations, planning for how to best coach and support participants and respond to their possible needs. Also, educating staff with knowledge to be more sensitive to the economic circumstances, of clients and the ways those circumstances can affect their lives. So again, the more we are able to design around the specific needs of those in the communities that we serve, we can develop our programs and be able to really meet the needs that are specific to the communities that we're serving in. So we're going to do something fun, which is allow you all to share in a breakout room. So I will go through these ground rules quickly here. And we're only going to focus on these two areas that we've just discussed. So really quick, the three S's of our ground rules are: this is a safe space to share. So feel free, don't be quiet, lean in and share. And also share the air. So if you're like me, I am a talker, I'll admit it. So sometimes it's important for me to lean back and let others lean in and share. And also share your knowledge and experience. I mean, there's some of you on here have been in this field for years, right? And you have a ton of experience and knowledge, especially in these two areas of strategic planning and program development and design. So, definitely share your experience with the group. So what we're going to do is we're going to let you select a breakout room by your agency size. So as you can see this chart here, small nonprofits, we're basically categorizing less than 20 employees. Mid-sized nonprofits are between 21 and 100 employees, and large nonprofits are over 101 employees. So you can choose which breakout room you'd like to participate in. And we're going to be focused on the two areas that I just briefly went over around strategic planning and program development and design. In the chat, you'll also find the Google slide, which is that's the place where you can drop your notes, you can put in your thoughts there, and we kind of use that throughout the meeting to refer to. So if you want to go ahead and pull that up, I'm already seeing the little icons at the top that shows you guys are joining the live Google Doc. So we'll just give you guys a couple of seconds to do that. And we'll go ahead and bring up the breakout room choice. And you all have a great conversation. We're looking at about 15 minutes, right, Jessica?
Yes, we are looking at 15 minutes, and if you aren't seeing the access to select your breakout room, it's usually maybe look at the bottom of your Zoom screen for the breakout room icon, and then from there you can pop up to select which room. Or if that's not working either, you can just share in the chat which room you want to go into, and we can manually move you there. So, oh, I'm sorry, the doc's not letting you open it. I'll drop it again. Hopefully that'll work, Amanda. Okay, Penny, we can move you into mid-size. There you go. And Esther, you as well.
Awesome. So we'll shift you all into your rooms as you requested. Some of you all are already moving, and let's have a great discussion around these two focus areas. So we'll see you all in a little over 10 minutes. And we're back. Looks like a few more folks are still coming in. By a show of hands, thumbs up, good breakout, to the side, it was okay. And thumbs down if you're bold enough to say, that was the worst breakout room I've ever been in. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. So we would love to hear a share out. And we have a few minutes to do this. So would anybody be willing to share from the small nonprofits? What stuck out to you? Just what did you get from the breakout room that you'd be willing to share? Small nonprofits.
This is Michael with Urban Enrichment Institute. Can y'all hear me all right?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Good to see you, Rashid. So yeah, I'll share out for our group. So we're the under 20, right? Big hearts, small staffs, right? And so what we discuss rather in our breakout group is just different things, probably similar to what y'all did as far as the Alice data affecting program design. Like for example, in my case, where we serve young men and we help mentor them and bridge gaps for their families. If I have a young man who's trying to, provide for his family, he might be 15, 16, but he already has been asked and pulled on to say, hey, let's pay this light bill, cell phone bill, whatever. That pulls away from our program. But if we can design around that, like, let's see how we can build workforce development into our program so that you can not have to necessarily disconnect from us, but you can still help your family, still be a part of the, the village here and keep going. That's a big part of the Alice data, being able to help us inform our program design. We also talked about a new vocabulary and language. I think that was Armando sharing from Mecca about how like we're doing the same work, it hasn't changed, but now we have a new vocabulary, new framework, new structure. So how do we apply that language? How do we put that to use in what we do? So those two are the bigger ideas. And, and of course it's tough with the pandemic. We talked a bit about technology and stuff and how that affects these families. So those kind of the bigger ideas from what we discussed.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you so much for sharing, and great to see you as well. Yeah, technology is like a new language, right? When you talk about technology, so as it relates to working with youth, that becomes a big part of the conversation. But those are great. I think those are excellent ideas. So let's hear from mid-size nonprofits. Mid-size. Anybody want to share for the group? Thank you in advance. Come on, that was the biggest group.
Lauren?
I will share for our group. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
Lauren Somerville, and we talked. So the strategic planning slide is admittedly blank, but our number one on program development, we felt worked both ways. So that was to check current zip codes that you've served and overlay with Alice data to make sure that you're meeting the needs of that community. So on the flip side of that, you could also take zip codes that you haven't served and start doing outreach in those communities to really, from a strategic standpoint, make sure that Alice population understands your services and what you're offering. We suggested looking at the data to know what changes direct service providers can use to help meet the needs of the Alice population. I think that kind of ties in to Michael's point about, budgeting and the way that people prioritize their budget needs. And then comparing family budget data to client budget data for similarities and differences. We also acknowledge that from a strategic planning standpoint, it probably was good to help just continue to educate boards about your priorities, mission, and the Alice population so they understand how programs need to adjust and adapt.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you. You should always speak further for your breakout rooms. So excellent. It sounds like a great discussion in the mid-sized nonprofit groups. And as you can see, there are some similarities, right? No matter what size the nonprofit is, you have themes that are true, whether it's small or large. So moving into our last nonprofit group, our last breakout group, large nonprofits. Who would like to share?
I can share. This is Kara from Baker Ripley.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So we were talking about in terms of strategic planning, really helping to identify like how do we allocate resources. That's it's a nice problem to have in a larger size, but it is still a pretty big task, right? Because you want to make sure, and people are always really scrutinizing, and rightly so, how many resources you have, and how you're doing that, and do you have any type of overarching governance around that? It's also really helpful for us to leverage for internal training. I thought that was a good point that somebody brought up, because we're so large. A lot of times, it's very difficult and to come up with our own training, and so this is a great kind of consistent training that we can use across divisions, across organizations within the broader agency. We also kind of all did the head nod around that it provides us a common language and consistency for continuity around the organizations. That's another difficulty when you have a sizable organization. In terms of program development and design, really helps us identify what the problem we're trying to solve, because larger organizations typically get a lot of onslaught of, here's all of these problems from all of these constituents and clients and neighbors. We want to try to solve everything because we feel like we have the resources to do so, but in fact it kind of dilutes a lot of that. And so really helps us hone, are we really trying to solve a consistent problem, or are we just kind of moving around a lot? And on the next slide, which one was that? It was
Is it program development?
Program, are we not doing the second one yet? The service delivery?
I think you covered it. Yeah, you did the strategic planning and program development. We'll have another second part to this. Yeah. So okay. I think you said a lot around, what large nonprofits with bigger budgets, definitely have to wrestle with. So thank you for sharing that, and appreciate all the participation in y'all's group, the large nonprofit, and in all the groups. So we do have another opportunity to share, and we want to hear from some others. So if you guys want to designate a spokesperson as we come out of our next set of breakout rooms, feel free to do so. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Jessica as we continue our discussion for today. Thank y'all.
Yes, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Rashid. So our next two sections are service delivery. So service delivery, that boots on the ground work. So how can we use the ALICE data in maybe enhancing current programs, looking at service areas? I know I heard a little bit of that. I think we're even going to hear overlap from what you already talked about, and what does that look like more when we're doing the work that our programs are doing. So enhancing the current program, maybe adjusting the program based on the needs of ALICE, looking for resources that can help support ALICE. We know that that's always a need, is to have current resources and resources that are readily available. And then there's actually like sharing the ALICE data. So sharing the budget, the survival budget, the survival stabilization budget with clients. We can also look at, how does this information help us support clients maybe in times of disaster, so they can plan and prepare for not just a disaster, but emergencies as well. And then through using the data in programs, better understanding some of the limitations that ALICE experiences, as we have the quantitative data, but then we also have that really wealth of knowledge around the consequences of insufficient income, or maybe the benefits of sufficient income. So kind of looking at it from both sides. But then also oftentimes our programs are working directly with clients. So, really having this opportunity to let clients know that they're not alone in this situation, that others are struggling to make ends meet, and it's impacting them in different ways. So providing some support for clients through this service delivery. And then other. So the other area was really just, it could be a variety of things. So it could maybe be advocating and informing our funding decisions about the ALICE population. I know for United Way, that's something we're hyper focused on, is shifting our funding and our investments to serving the ALICE population and those that are living below the federal poverty line. But then also advocacy efforts. So we know on the state level, there's some advocacy efforts to create more awareness and policies that can benefit ALICE. I did hear one of the groups talk about training and development for team members, but then also strengthening education, coaching, and training opportunities across the agency on ALICE and their struggles. Creating greater awareness for ALICE, whether that's through marketing communication efforts or public relations, and then fundraising and funding, and really funding by integrating the ALICE data into grant applications, citing the data where applicable. There's a lot of opportunities. And so these are just some other areas I think you can really kind of think radically, think outside the box for what are other ways your agency or your program could use the ALICE data. So here, we're going to go back into our breakout rooms. Similar to last time, I hope you guys are enjoying these breakout rooms by agency size. So you can go back into either small, mid-size, or large nonprofits. And so you'll use the same Google Doc. And I saw some of you guys maybe already went to that second slide. So that's great. So you already know that there's a slide for your service delivery in other areas. So by large nonprofit, medium, and then small. And we'll give you again about 15 minutes. So this is also your opportunity as well. If you would like to check out maybe another room, see what was happening in the mid-size, if you were in another one, or go to the large or go to the small, just drop us in the chat and we will let you know. We will switch you up. But you'll have, again, 15 minutes here, and then we'll come back out and share out. So I will open the breakout rooms now.
And everyone's currently in the room that you were previously in. So if you want to go to a different room, like Jessica mentioned, just drop it in the chat and we can switch you over.
Great. Thank you, Rashid. And there you go. We'll see you guys back in just a little bit.